Yes, I was born in Miami, Florida. My mother lived with several addictions of drugs and alcohol, and I did not know that until recently in my life. I was given very different scenarios, but the point is that I was adopted in France by my dad's parents at 3 years old, around 3 years old, and I grew up not knowing why. So I constantly searched, but I think my family was very stigmatized and partially didn't also know the full story themselves. My dad was not around when I grew up. He came to a couple of birthday parties, a couple of Christmases, but he was very irregular. And so I didn't have the connection that I needed, and I couldn't get any answers. What has helped me is not people trying to give me tools or helping me with ways. It's people loving me unconditionally, people listening non-judgmentally, and people that didn't have answers but made sure to let me know that they believed in me no matter what, that they loved me, that I was somebody that was capable. Not, hey, you should eat this, you shouldn't eat that, you should do this, you shouldn't do that, but I see you. You are important and you are loved.
Bonjour Josette, comment ça va?
Ça va très bien, merci Rob. Et toi?
Ah, très bien, merci. And that is the end of the French podcast. We will continue in English for our listeners. All right, Josette Pelatan, very nice to meet you. We've met fairly recently when I became aware of you and your story on LinkedIn. Fascinating story that I'm really eager to dive in. And what really caught my attention was really when you just look at your resume or your headline of Josette. You're a writer, you're a PhD, you're starting a production company, or a filmmaker. And then in the same line, you're homeless, you're suffering from a pretty serious illness, you're the daughter of a drug addict prostitute. These are not usually all the characteristics or descriptions that you see in the headline. And it's that alone is such a captivating story. And I know that the latter components they're not what define you. And when I listened to you speaking yesterday, it was very clear that you're not defined by that past of where you came from. You are very defined, I think, by where you're going and what you want to achieve. And I just love that about you. And I think your story is your life story is such a story of grit, adventure, and faith, which is the whole theme of this podcast. So just wonderful to have this chance to sit down and chat with you about this.
Thank you so much, Rob. The honor is all mine, and I look forward to learning a lot about you. Your website is amazing, so I hope my followers check it out. Yes, it's the duality of my life is kind of empowering because I chose to see it that way. So the lower you fall, the higher you can go. And I have that delusional faith in my vision, and I have gotten mostly rid of fear along my journey. So I'm ready for whatever's up next.
And I'm fascinated, and that's been a common theme, Josette, of the people that I've interviewed who have fallen, have suffered various setbacks and challenges, but rise up, like you said. And it's an interesting statement: the lower you fall, the higher you can rise. And that does seem to be true for many people. And what I'm very curious in studying and looking at is why that's true for certain people and not others, right?
Yes, and that's absolutely a fascinating question and very valid. I think that I have gotten a lot of support that many people didn't have the luxury of, and I do need to constantly acknowledge my many privileges that led to me gaining an education and support, again, that others might not have gotten. So balancing out the fact that, yes, I am absolutely resilient and I was blessed by divine intervention meeting post-traumatic growth, but also acknowledging in a humble way that, well, you know what, this is part of it and I'm not going to discard it. But maybe if I hadn't been white and hadn't had a French name and a French accent and hadn't had an education to use certain words in certain context, I wouldn't have gotten as much help leading me to that current journey.
Yeah.
So it's important to constantly balance out that cheering myself up because I have to clap for myself. I have to,
Yes.
especially because I grew up as a very insecure little girl and young woman until fairly recently, where I felt unseen and not good enough. So it's important for me to be like, oh my goodness, all the things I've overcome and accomplished by myself, but also thankfully due to many things that were out of not necessarily coming from me. Does that make
Mm,
sense?
yeah, and you're grateful for that. Those things that
Absolutely,
helped
absolutely.
lift you up. So can we start at the beginning, your childhood as a little girl, because that is not your typical childhood, fortunately for most people. But can we go back to that beginning? And was that in Miami where you were born?
Yes, I was born in Miami, Florida. My mother lived with several addictions of drugs and alcohol, and I did not know that until recently in my life. I was given very different scenarios, but the point is that I was adopted in France by my dad's parents at 3 years old, around 3 years old. And I grew up not knowing why. So I constantly searched, but I think my family was very stigmatized and partially didn't also know the full story themselves. My dad was not around when I grew up. He came to a couple of birthday parties, a couple of Christmases, but he was very irregular. And so I didn't have the connection that I needed, and I couldn't get any answers. Though my dad, when my grandfather passed away, I was probably going to be placed with an aunt again, and I had lived with an aunt for about 4 years. And I was extremely rebellious. I had failed 2 grades. I dropped out of high school. So my father realized I was going to make bad choices in my life and that he needed to work with me because threat was not. I was the child that was so rebellious that I would turn the other cheek, literally. So he told me, you are also American and I can help you go to the United States. In the United States, you can work at 16 years old, but you have to understand you're going to be on your own. And so are you sure you want to do that? So, of course, as a rebellious child, I followed my heart. And with my dad's help, who didn't tag along, but he helped me financially to do this, I left to the United States, to Dallas, Texas,
At age 16.
at age 16. Yes.
So when you were 3 when you moved to France,
I was 3, see, from
3
3
years
to
old.
16. Yeah.
So you didn't really know at the time, and you said it took a while to know even who your mom was, and her
Yes.
background.
So I met my mother by choice when I was 18 years old. I asked her to come down to the I mean, she was in the United States, to El
Mm-hmm.
Paso, Texas, where I was, because, and I'm gonna get the public extremely uncomfortable here, because I've carried massive hate towards my mother. And that's such a strong word, but I don't have a better one.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, the stigma that comes with it, because all faith groups teach us that we need to honor our parents. And I grew up in such a family environment that, you have to do your prayers and you have to send goodwill to your parents because they gave you life. So one thing that I skipped, which is actually very important to explain part of this story, is that when I was 4 years old, my mother visited me to France. That was the only time she came in my life. And as a young child, no one should know what passionate, visceral hate feels like. But this is when I discovered that I had it. She came to France, and I didn't know who that lady was, but I had that passionate, visceral hate towards her. And it was very hard every Christmas because I would get a phone call from that lady who spoke English, and I had to say I love you, and I was kind of forced to, one, hide my feelings of hate because they were not accepted by my grandparents, by anyone truly. But when I turned 18, I was like, wow, I really don't want to carry that feeling, which is unjustified because I understand everybody makes mistakes according to their own mental health and their own journeys. So I'm going to meet that person so that I can heal. And she came to El Paso, Texas. I was 18 years old. I regretted it very much because for the 3 days that she was here, I think I aged about 20 years just controlling, hiding that hate, which was, again, extremely visceral and unjustified. Like, I don't know why I had it, but it was there. So I decided, okay, this is not going to work out. I don't like hurting people. And so I tend to step away from their lives if there is the hint in me that I might do so. Um, so throughout my life, I've kind of tried understanding, could it be because she hated herself during pregnancy? Could it be because I suffered so much as a fetus, a baby inside of her with the drugs and the alcohol? Could it be I knew that I had been abused, but I didn't know by whom and how? I just didn't have access to those documents. And I kept on asking my dad, I want to know what happened. How did you meet her? Who is she? Like, I don't know anything about my mother. And all I know is that I have visceral, passionate hate. So should I let you ask the question or continue? Because I don't know how. If I'm too overwhelming.
No, you're not at all. And I think this is probably an important element of the story. When you were growing up in France, and your grandparents had basically adopted you, so you didn't have siblings around you, I assume. Was it a big family? Were you part of a larger family there?
Lived with my grandparents, my dad's parents, until I was 9. And then at 9 years old, I transferred, but it was in the same garden, in the same area. We're from a small village.
Mm-hmm.
And so I lived with my aunt and my uncle and my 2 cousins for 4 years. But I didn't adapt. Like every weekend, I would go back to my grandfather. And I remember the feeling of, take me back. I'll do good in school. I'll make friends. I'll be normal. Take me back. Because my anchor was truly my grandfather, who was the person I felt attached to. And I have massive reactive attachment disorder. So it's something that I don't think the rest of the family truly understood, because I was always so good at hiding, like at masking. And my grandfather understood, so after 4 years, he took me back. But I didn't know that until after he died. He had a prostate cancer, and it made it very hard for him to take care of my grandmother, who was partially disabled due to a stroke, and of me with his cancer. So I was placed also by choice into a boarding school, a boarding high school for agriculture. I loved animals, and I would just come back on weekends. Until he passed away. He passed away when I was 15. And so
what did you call your grandfather?
A papi, which is like grandpa. Papi.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Your
because I
papi.
knew my dad. So my dad was my dad. He just was in and out, and sometimes for a couple of years. And he was a mysterious man. So my dad at heart was my grandfather, but I couldn't call him that.
Yeah. Were you suffering from trauma at that time?
Absolutely. I mean, ever since I was a little girl, I had severe complex PTSD. I just didn't have a name for it. And
Right.
I think my grandparents were amazing people. They just didn't have the education. And because I was also hiding all the time, I didn't want to be more of a burden than I already felt I was. So all the nightmares I had, all the panic attacks at school, all the crying spells, went unnoticed. I know that I was placed into special ed early on, so they would pull me out of classes to go with a special tutor, which also was traumatic because I was so very highly aware of this. So no other kids realized. They would come and pick up the kids to leave early for tutoring, but I was dreading every single day being the kid that didn't do well enough and therefore needed to leave to the other room. So all this made me very aware as a teacher, when I became a teacher, that sometimes kids go unnoticed, but they know more than we know. So programs like Gifted and Talented can be so damaging for other kids who therefore don't think of themselves as gifted and talented. Kids who are in special ed, we don't think that they are aware that it means something specific, but they might identify as feeling less than. And I certainly did. So I had So much trauma, Rob, because I was hypersensitive. So I remember suffering from kids stepping on ants. And the feelings were always so extreme. The polarity of my hate towards my mother was balanced out by an extreme, out of the norm polarity of empathy, which was very painful. Like, don't cut a tree in front of me. Don't show me images of people suffering or to the extent of a cockroach. Like, don't do that because it
Mm-hmm.
physically hurts me.
Interesting.
So I became passionate about the brain later on in life. Like, how can I be so out of the spectrum? Sorry, go ahead.
You mentioned a bit of a faith element with your grandparents. Did that involve them taking you to any type of church or cathedral, or what? How was faith practiced growing up?
Yes, my grandparents were Catholic, and I went to church on Sundays. I went to catechism. I think my grandfather was truly, in my eyes, what we call a good Christian, which he was humble and he tried not to judge. He lived through a lot. His father died in World War II when he was 7 years old, so he stopped school to stuff mattresses with his mom.
Mm.
And he was in a concentration camp in Germany, where he was, well, enslaved. Literally, that's what happened. But he was one of the lucky ones who survived and eventually went back, got a house, his 3 kids, one of them being my dad. And he was a very quiet, big man, but I loved being with him because he loved the earth. So he liked planting stuff in the garden, and I was always fascinated by nature. So every year it was a big problem because I would pick up the flowers of the vegetables to give to my grandmother. So we didn't have many vegetables when I was a little girl.
You're picking them too early. So you come to Texas. Why Texas? Why did you pick Texas when you decided to come over at 16?
And my dad had some contacts in Texas that could
Okay.
help me find a job. And so the job, well, of course, I didn't speak English, I didn't have an education, was to become a cowgirl. That was my first job because the
A
cows don't
cowgirl
require anything. Yes.
in El Paso?
No, it was in Dallas. It was in
In Dallas.
um Irvin area. And
Irvine,
there were
yes.
longhorns.
Yes.
So that
Well,
was
they're the Dallas
interesting.
Cowgirls. Aren't those the cheerleaders for the Cowboys?
I think so. But I
But that's
wasn't that type of cowgirl
not
at
that type of
all.
cowgirl.
No, I was the one fixing fence at 5 a.m. and then separating calves from cow to sell to the meat market, which also was so hard on my spirits because I love animals and I was
Yeah.
contributing to cruelty. But it was a roof.
Yes. So you didn't. I was going to ask, where did you live? Did that provide you a place to live?
I lived on the ranch, and so I was working very hard. Like I said, in the morning, we started at 5 and we had to do fixed fencing. I was working with just a crew of big muscle men as a little petite 16 years old girl. And then and then during the day it was moving the cows to certain area of the ranch. So
Mm-hmm.
and then it was separating the calf to sell them into the market to get them into big trucks. And in the evening, the family had 3 kids, so I had to be the maid, the cook. Okay, I'm a terrible cook, but to be fair, it was making hamburgers. So I was okay with that. Just putting stuff in between buns was manageable.
Beans and burgers.
Um, yes, yes. And the family was Mormon, so I was very determined to learn English. So every Sunday they took me to their church and I studied the Book of Mormon because that's what there was.
Interesting. And did you
Huh?
find that fascinating compared to growing up in the Catholic Church?
Absolutely. The hardest part was the coffee. No coffee, and that was brutal for
No
a French
coffee.
girl. Yes,
No,
they are not allowed to have coffee.
no
But
cafe.
they didn't. They never really tried to convert me, which I highly appreciated. Um, and it was fascinating, like just observing different faith groups and the way that they operate. I took it as a learning experience, definitely.
Did you, now 16? did you start going into our, public schools at that time for education?
No, actually, after I think so, it was such a long time ago, Rob, but I believe I was in the ranch about 7, 8 months. And so after that, one of the family at their church believed that the work I was doing was not appropriate for a teenage girl. So they helped me get a job as a babysitter living in with a Lutheran family, which was, oh, for me, that was heaven. I was taking care of 4 kids, dogs, cats, birds, and they treated me like family. So I shared a bedroom with the oldest teenage girl, which was 2 years younger than I was. She wasn't a fan because I was the boss, right?
Mm.
But it's totally justified. And the family paid for ESL classes. So they brought me to Richland College, where they had to fight their way to get me in because I was so young and they only accepted adults. But they managed. And so after a couple of ESL classes, they signed me up to pass the GED and they paid for that. So I took the GED and I was like, I'm a high school dropout. I'm never going to pass. And I passed and I was so amazed, like, wow, maybe I'm capable of some stuff.
Fascinating. So you got your GED, and then you went on and got your bachelor's, your master's, and your PhD. Is that correct?
Yes, there was many breaks in between, but yes, I
Many
did.
breaks. So take us through that. How did that come about from cowgirl to college?
Cowgirl to college. It was a process. So I was always fairly hyper independent, and I think that's part of the reactive attachment disorder. I moved to College Station where I took more ESL classes with financial ed. I fell in love with a Mexican man from Chihuahua who told me one day, well, my family's in El Paso, Texas. Do you want to come? And I didn't know where that was in the map, but I had nothing but a backpack. And I was like, sure, let's go. So I ended up in El Paso, Texas, and I am so very thankful because this is my home now. People are incredibly supportive and welcoming. And I started, again, financial ed helped a lot. I started going to school thanks to financial ed, but then I was also a waitress, a maid, a babysitter. I was catching the bus everywhere. Mm, um, I got some awards, which helped my self-esteem so much. And I started envisioning a possibility for me in terms of education. So I'm skipping all the chapters because I think the big part of my story is that in between those success was a lot of mental health concerns that were piling up because I
I
wasn't
was going to
able
ask
to,
that, Josette.
yeah,
Was it still, because that doesn't just go away?
absolutely. Well, yes and no, because I think that since 2022, I was gifted with what I call divine intervention / post-traumatic growth. So I've improved tremendously in my mental health. But before that, my mental health kept on piling up because I was exhausted, fatigued, not sleeping well due to nightmares, lots of paranoia. And being a vulnerable woman, I've gone through a very large number of harassment. In 2015, I had a man who broke in my apartment, and if I hadn't had my phone at hand to call 911, I would be dead. And so they had to tase him. They had to break down my door, tase him. He only got 60 something days in prison, and I got 10 hours of free counseling. So the system is really failing at helping victims like me. In 2017, I got raped by a landlord. So I was very sick and I didn't know what I had for many years, right? And that will come next in the portion of the story. But I was exhausted. I had a master's. I was working in a daycare because that's all I could handle. And it was too much already. And I had 2 cats, a bird, and my service dog, no money. So the only place that would take me in was downtown. 2 men who had a small room. They told me, okay, we'll take you with all of your animals for $200 a month, which was literally all I could afford. So very depressed, exhausted, sick, undiagnosed, and trying to keep that job, keep on moving in life. And on my birthday, the landlord drugged raped me, which was, I mean, when you think you can't take anymore and you have everything else that comes into movies, which that happens to you, crossing that line of not dying by suicide is the toughest challenge. So
Josette,
it was that.
is this the same rape or is this a second rape?
The one in 2015, I was not raped because the SWAT team arrived on time. So
Okay, you stopped.
they
They were able to stop that.
they broke my door and they tased the guy, and so the response was very prompt. Um, for this was a date rape, absolutely. And I was so exhausted, Rob, because I was piled up with so many traumas and trying to be resilient and trying to figure out how can I keep my cats and my dog and just move on. You know, I really want to be okay, but I couldn't. And the fact that I had some good friends that helped. So I had a friend who was in, I think he was in Wisconsin at the time. I reached out and he flew me to his place because I was not functional at all. I had another friend who brought my animals to somebody's house. And when it was time for me to press charges, the gentleman told me, you know, you're gonna have to tell the story over and over, and it's gonna be you're by yourself. Like there was that insistence that, are you sure you want to try? Because that's his word
Mm-hmm.
against yours, and it's gonna be very traumatic. And I couldn't at this time. I was just so exhausted that um, I had to make choices. What was my priority? And my priority was to survive it.
Yeah. And you already were suffering from trauma, and here someone piles on another trauma. You know, Josette, this reminds me a little bit of another story I shared on a prior podcast. So, this guy, when he was young, his dad became an alcoholic. And so his neighbor's dad, the neighbor gentleman, kind of took him under his wing and to be his father figure, as did the Catholic priest where he was going to school. Both of the men abused him. So, kind of like your situation, taking advantage of someone who's already suffering, right? A trauma, and then just piling on and taking advantage and making it so much worse.
Yes, well, nobody should take advantage of anyone, right? That being said,
No,
ever.
no.
And so, but it was right now when I think about it, I'm like, wow, I'm able to talk about it in front of the world. And it's
Yes.
not something at the time I thought I was ever gonna do. And now I feel so empowered that this is going to be part of my production. I don't know how, Rob, but I have like those two productions, right? The Prostitute's Daughter, which the title is controversial, and I didn't get to that bit because my mom's side of the story is that I'm the product of rape. And so I choose to believe my dad because throughout the years, I built bonds with my dad and I loved my dad and I saw who he was as a human being with most people. So I First of all, I think my heart could not take believing that side of the story. And it would be giving up on my best friend because he became later on in life my best friend, the man that would stand by me no matter what. I could share anything and everything with him. But the second production is Homeless with a PhD. That's my current situation, but it's an achievement story because at the end of that production, I will gain my disability in the US. I will get access to treatment and be the first producer while being homeless.
You said several things that want me to dive a little bit deeper. So it's interesting. Your mom is telling a different story. That is she
Hmm.
suggesting she was not a prostitute?
I don't know because she never confessed, but during my dissertation, I reached out to one of her family members, so one of my bloodline that I was able to contact because I was trying to get some kind of evidence for my early childhood traumas. And so that person, which is related to my mom, told me that her side, their side of the story is that my dad was trying to get citizenship and that she helped my dad to get me to France because my mother had been abusive to her kids and to so no matter which part that family member or this family member or this family member. The story is extremely dramatic. So there might be pieces of truth in all of them, and I will never fully know. What I do know is that my mother lives with mental health concerns, and that is sure. And there was some abuse, definitely.
Yeah. So you were suffering from this PTSD and, the trauma. When did you start also having physical problems? Or I think they're both intertwined. I think the mental and the physical are so connected, right? One can drive the other. But for what you actually have finally been diagnosed for, do you think you were suffering from that all along?
Absolutely. So my diagnosis is called relapsing MOGAD, and it feels refreshing to say it because I didn't know what I had for so long. But I wouldn't. Right now, they have me under childhood relapsing MOGAD, meaning that I most likely had it my whole life. And it makes sense because when I was vaccinated for chickenpox, I had it very severely after that. When I was vaccinated for measles, I had it very severe after that. And I had shingles at 11 years old, which was also very
11.
severe. So, yes, which is extremely rare. So there was absolutely immune component in my journey. And it would also explain the fact that I constantly felt foggy when I was a little girl, and every time I stressed, my lymph nodes swell. So anyway, I discarded all this for trauma and stress because, like you said, there is a book called The Body Keeps the Score, which mentions exactly what you said, right? Trauma piles up, and of course, it's gonna interfere with your biological programming. So, but the severe symptoms really started appearing, I would say, in 2013, where the fatigue was so creeped in. I couldn't get up some days. I had to constantly call in, and no real excuse. I knew my lymph node would swell for the slightest effort or stress. And then in 2018, I started losing my eyesight, and that was very scary. So I would feel like I was having a stroke, little stroke symptoms,
Would it just go black or gray, or what would
like a
happen?
veil. It felt like I
Hmm.
had a veil, and I could feel. It's very difficult to explain, but something wasn't right that I didn't have a name for in my brain, and the feeling came with I would have to cover one eye to confirm, like, wow, there is a veil in front of this eye. Why? What am I doing wrong? And so every episode was longer and had more and more symptoms. So I had a lot of gastrointestinal issues. I had some spine pain that I couldn't explain. And every time it got worse at night, where my last severe episode was probably in the midst of 2021, where I had agonizing bone pain at night, and then I would have seizures, and I would be vomiting out of pain, and I would go to the ER unable to see in one eye and so scared because I had tremors and I was so young. And so they would do MRIs of my brain and tell me, no, sometimes we just don't know. It's probably severe mental health. And I was like, what do you mean? Like severe to the point where I lose my balance and my eyesight and have seizures? I didn't go to war. Maybe, I mean, of course, my early childhood could explain a lot of the severe trauma. Like you said, it's intertwined. But it was way too many symptoms. I felt like I couldn't breathe, like I was strapped in. And people told me to exercise. And what I noticed is every time I exercised, I should have felt better if it had been anxiety related, but I was feeling worse. So there was a correlation between my body temperature change when I showered, when I took a walk or a run, when I entered a hot car, very clear correlation. And that is called the Utov syndrome, which I didn't know at the time. But the Utov syndrome only appears in neurological conditions such as MS, multiple sclerosis, NMO, and MOGAD. Um, so I know I'm overwhelming you. I can't keep on going because that's how my brain is. I don't notice. You have to. Hey,
You
Josette.
haven't overwhelmed me yet, Josette. Your
You're
story
sweet.
is fascinating and just so you are very positive. You're a very positive spirit. When I watched you yesterday, you're just bubbling with enthusiasm. But I can't imagine when you were going through some of this really difficult times, or maybe you were. When was there a flip of the switch that got you more enthusiastic, or how did you find the grit to keep carrying on through all of that? And maybe you even did have suicidal thoughts at the darkest moments.
Absolutely. I was very suicidal in 2021. There was a switch, which I believe happened in January of 2022 when I had a tumor removed in Mexico in my neck. So during the surgery, it felt it's really hard to put into words, but this is what I describe in my newsletter as post-traumatic growth meets divine intervention, where I felt so much hate towards the world, so much hate towards my friends who weren't around when I was having a serious surgery, which could have been which was life-threatening. And when I felt that I could have done so much for people that I loved in my life to the point of giving my whole life to save them, and no one was there. So that choice felt as, okay, you have the power to burn down the world. Do you want to use it for good? And after that surgery, I just started experiencing what is post-traumatic growth, which my outlook and perspective on every experience that I've gotten has fully changed 110% around.
What was
So
the
I'm,
what do you think was
yeah.
the divine intervention there? Did you feel God? Did you feel a spirit? Did you feel something compelling you?
Um, I've always been very spiritual, so I can't say I saw something. It was more of a feeling of this is happening to you so you can know and realize the extent of your powers, right? And so the extent of your power is you could burn down the world. You have so much hate. But that power can be used for good, alchemized into saving, into getting your diagnosis, into getting your treatment, into exposing the system, into inspiring millions. Where
Sharing
do you
your
want to go?
story.
Yes. What do you want to
Yes,
do with it? And
right.
so, yeah, that's what I call divine intervention, but it's truly for the scientific community. It gives a perspective on post-traumatic growth because after a stroke, patients develop new neural pathways. Within the first 6 months, that's when you relearn how to move your fingers, how to eat with a fork, and I feel that maybe, just maybe, post-traumatic growth has some aspect of having a stroke. Like this is only the level till which your brain can take it. And
Hmm.
that's in itself a second chance if you use it well. So that's just a theory from my end, but I find it fascinating because of my experience. So ever
Yes.
since 2022, it's been uphill steadily for me. I have never been better mentally, emotionally, physically, and it's just a great place to be.
Was there a forgiveness element to this? Did you feel a release of that hatred, that visceral hatred that you had?
Yes, the biggest portion of that. So it was fairly easy for me to forgive the rapist and my friends and things like that. And I don't have anything to forgive to my mom because I don't have any memories. But the hate is still there and I cannot deny it. But I believe it has some kind of purpose. The hardest part was for me to forgive myself because of that hate, because it's such a hard thing to live with and to, wow, I can't believe I'm such a horrible person. Nobody wants to feel evil, and it truly was a feeling that I did not choose and that is highly stigmatized. In fact, most of the auditors must be like, what, Josette who kisses the birds and protects the bugs? Yes, that same person lives with that other extreme, which I don't wear on my forehead.
Yes. Petite Josette, how can she have this hatred?
Yes, yes, and I do. But so forgiveness was mostly for myself, that I wasn't able to expose the rapist because in that it came the, oh my goodness, all the university student that might go through that because I wasn't strong enough to expose it at the
And
time.
and forgiving ourselves, Josette, that can be the hardest thing. right?
It was. Yeah.
And stopping all those thoughts and voices
Uh-huh.
that go that are
Redirecting
associated with
them.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Did you also, do you think, convert your mindset maybe from victim to victor, you know?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. I took full advantage of that what a divine intervention slash post traumatic growth. And I started incorporating into my routine everything that felt could potentially help. So from affirmation, visualization, manifestation, breath work, and I do it every single day. It is my lifeline to visualize the product already achieved in terms of health. So I think I'm healthy because, of course, I watch my diet and my lifestyle and I listen to my body, but also because the Western system tells us some stuff are not, we are not able to self-cure. And I'm like, let's see. I like a challenge. And I feel well. I feel fantastic. So
You were, along with the PTSD, did you suffer also just from depression and anxiety and, the whole basket of things that we think about with mental illness?
very severely, Rob. Yes, I was just good at hiding the depression. I was always the clown. So only my close partners, like boyfriends, would be the ones that would find out that I was severely depressed. But in front of the rest of the world, I think I was a clown. I was good at hiding most
Hmm.
of this. The
Yeah.
anxiety was really hard to hide with testing. Like I will just, my mind would leave completely. In fact, if anybody attended my dissertation, this is the worst dissertation in the history of dissertations. But thankfully, I graduated because of the written work and in the support of my committee. But yes, the depression was severe, and I have encountered many times moment where life didn't feel worth fighting for. So I empathize very much with people that fall into drugs and alcohol and settle for prostitution, for a man, a relationship. Um, I am so thankful, blessed beyond measure, privileged, and I'm aware of it because I didn't cross those lines, but I also was close enough to considering all of them.
Yes, and there are plenty of people, Josette, who have suffered like you, those types of illnesses,
Hmm.
um, who may still have the same privileges, but still go down the wrong path, who don't find the strength of that turning point that you found, right? And you had some core
Yes.
strength along with the assistance, but really that core inner strength to make that change.
Yes, Rob, and I do give myself prop for this, but also acknowledging that we are all wired differently. So that resilience in me truly is not a given to everybody else, right? So I was the fetus born from drugs and alcohol, and maybe that added a component to my resilience in other ways. Not everybody has that fight, and so it's so easy to judge and tell people that they are lazy because we don't understand that willpower has a lot to do with your health and your
Yeah.
mental health. And so no, judging the world is just not where we should go, I think.
You've been exposed to a lot more of that from the homeless perspective than most of us ever will. Um, what did you see there? And were there moments where you were actually living on the street? You were the person that you see on the side of the road sleeping in a cardboard box. Did you reach
So
that
no card.
level?
I have been in the streets, but no cardboard box because I was always very good at, again, at hiding certain stuff, and I am fairly known in El Paso. So there was a lot of stigma when that happened. I also know a lot of people that I could have called and chose not to, and those are mental health elements. So I think at some point I did, that was recently, I think about a year ago, I left a shelter, a homeless shelter that I was living in, and my service dog at the time was very old. In fact, he passed away in October, and he couldn't handle being in the streets. And I felt so guilty because I had made that conscious choice with no regret of leaving that shelter when I did for my own reasons. But my dog was struggling a lot. So I posted on Facebook, like, hey, I need somebody to take Milo. I need somebody to take Milo because he's not handling the streets well. And so, of course, having a big following, someone pulled through right away, picked up Milo, and I was offered those places to live in. I didn't accept them from people I was close to. Mental health, again, is so complex. I accepted it from people that maybe had good intentions, but some had other intentions as well. But I'm strong. I was strong enough at that point. I was strong enough to, okay, this is the intention, I'm out. So no cardboard box. I have slept in garages. I know my way around in the city. I know where to not get caught, not actively holding a sign per se or begging for money. Again, this was also carrying a lot of guilt because I have so much. And so when people tell me, why couldn't you call me? Sometimes I don't even know, but I know that the feeling is so deeply ingrained, and that's most likely the reactive attachment disorder, the stigma, the not wanting to hear you could do this, and that, because fatigue and emotional exhaustion can go very deep.
Yeah, I guess what I was trying to get at, Josette, was the people that you encounter on the street, in the shelters. What do you find there in terms of their resilience? Or is it, have they chosen to be living on the streets? Have they lacked that resilience? There is a tendency when you see someone, I think you think, oh, are they choosing to be there? What circumstance brought them there? Can we help them? Do they want help?
It's a multi-layered issue. I am convinced that when people are well, physically, mentally, emotionally, everybody wants to contribute. And so choice is a very difficult word to juggle around because I have made the choice to be in the streets many times. But that choice is highly linked to not being emotionally and mentally well enough to choose something else. There is an element of feeling worthy. There is an element of feeling like a burden. There is an element of shame. There is an element of exhaustion and just wanting to let me be. I don't want to listen to people trying to rescue me. I don't want to listen to all of the options right now. I just need to be me, myself, and I. So a lot of the people, most, if not all of the people I have met in the streets and in shelters are amazing human beings with incredible stories. And what keeps them in the street, I am going to say it, I'm blaming the system. I'm blaming the system 100% because if we gave people their basic needs, and what I mean by basic needs is housing, safe with running water, healthy food, accessible without stress. Some people need to be in retirement for 3-4 years. 20 years old, yes, they need to be in retirement for 3-4 years, surrounded by a loving community so that they can gain their spirit back. And that is an investment that, in my eyes, is worth considering instead of throwing our taxes to things that we might not approve, because that person might change the world, and they definitely will if you give them that chance.
They're broken. I think what you're saying is that they're broken for whatever reason.
Their spirit, yes, has been consumed through trauma and lack of resources to overcome those traumas. I think so.
You've written a number of books, and one caught my eye, Rescued by the Spirit, which I only noticed yesterday, Josette, so I haven't had a chance to read it. But can you take us through a little bit of that and what that entails and when you wrote that?
So all my books were written, well, they are still being constantly worked on because I kind of slacked with the panic of losing my eyesight. And it's better to me to put something out there that's slacked than not do it and waiting for that potential vision loss. But Rescued by the Spirit is partially true and partially altered, and I let the readers decide with discernment which part is which. The ultimate goal is my identity as a woman growing up. I was very close to the Bible. I hanged on to Christ consciousness. I was fascinated by Christ consciousness. And so some of the stories I couldn't relate to at all, but that was my focus, and it was fine because that was a focus of the Bible. But reading the Bible, I couldn't help but to think, wow, they are not part of the 1044 that are saved. They are the sinners because of Eve. They are less than because they are not prophets. And so my identity was kind of shattered because I felt from a young age the need to be my hero. I wanted to be the hero. I didn't want to be the princess. I wanted to rescue. I wanted to change the world. So there was that deep clash. So eventually I started studying about cults and the way that they operate in all faith, by the way, just not including my own, I don't even identify as a Catholic anymore, but growing up, I looked at the fact that there was a lot of manipulation in all texts, and it had to do with patriarchy, with control and influence. So it was a way for me to reunite my feminine identity with my desire to be the savior, my own savior, and to be the one that saves others, not have a man save me.
Interesting. And do you
Yes.
still read the Bible, Josette?
I have it. I have it. I read it. Oh, it's by my nightstand. Yes,
Yes.
I do. Of course. Are you testing me?
No, no
I
test. No, I'm
do.
very good. There you go. No, it wasn't a test. I was just curious. And I'm on my own faith journey, Josette, and I've rebelled against it for many, many years. I was raised in it, rebelled against it heavily, and have been coming back to it. And I'm always fascinated by others' faith journey. And some who are raised in the faith rebel and then come back. Some rebel and never come back, or they adopt a different faith. So I was just curious, kind of on your journey where you've landed.
Yes, I am also fascinated by people's faith and no desire to convert anybody at all, because I feel that this is the divine, whatever people call it, intervenes exactly as it should through the right ways, the right people. And it, I call myself an Omnist, which is very controversial. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I don't know that I have, so explain it to me.
Okay, Omnist is I believe there is a little bit of truth everywhere and a lot of lie and manipulation everywhere. But that the kingdom of God is within you, right? That's mentioned in the Bible. And so this quote is very dear to my heart, and this is when discernment comes in, when I connect directly, right? So this priest, this preacher, this rabbi, this whoever I listen to, I listen to my heart, trusting the divine to intervene to get me that 1% of truth that they are sharing. And same thing with religious texts and with philosophies, things like that.
Yeah, interesting. I find the Bible fascinating because you can read the same verse at different stages of life, and it has such different meanings to you, right?
Absolutely.
And
Yes,
you
absolutely.
can go on the web and find 5 different interpretations of it too. But I think
Mm-hmm.
the healthier is not going to the web, but just searching your own heart of what is God telling you.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree. I agree. That's why the kingdom of God is within you. It's all that truth is trusting our instincts, which, well, instinct is actually not the right word because your instinct can lead you to beat up somebody. So,
Yes.
but trusting your heart truly is that discernment key of the kingdom of God is within you. Yes.
Yeah. I was chatting with some guys this morning about this. Do you find somewhere where you feel the closest to God?
Yes. When I study so if I read the Bible, I function much better. I go to Bible studies as well, but I function much better to that inner connection of doing it by myself. And it's so important to me. Jesus Christ liked to be on top of a mount by an olive tree. No olive trees around here, but that's one of the things I also find a spiritual connection with. If I sit outside and I meditate and I pray and then I dive in the text, it feels so much easier to me to have that answer that I'm seeking from the text than if I am with a group of people specifically focused on specific paragraphs. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Yeah. And Jesus did go off by himself. He was very intentional having that alone time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for myself, I think I identify two places. One is out in nature,
Yes.
just
Yeah.
being out in God's creation. And the second is when I could be in my car or at church and listening to music. There's
Huh?
certain music that I can feel very connected to God with.
Yes. Music is very powerful.
It
Very
is.
powerful.
It is. All right. Well, Josette, we have reached the very exciting portion of the show that I call rapid fire.
Okay.
And so this is just some quick questions. What I found, though, is it's never quick because it dives us into other conversations. But I've put some questions together for you.
Okay.
We were talking about homelessness. What's one truth you want people to know about the homeless?
They are human beings that deserve all the tools possible and all the support they can get to then flip the
Yes.
switch around. Everybody needs to be treated well. And some people need more love, more attention, more patience, more support than others. These people definitely need more of all of this, and take
Yeah.
away the judgment or the preaching, because you preach by the way that you love. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, do what Jesus would do.
I was going to say, Josette, that was one of Jesus's, right?
Absolutely.
He was definitely
Yes.
a rabbi with social justice. He thought very
Yes.
much about the poor and the needy and the homeless. I mean, that was absolutely
Mm-hmm.
part of
Yeah.
his preaching.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Second one, homeless or unhoused, and why does the term
Okay,
matter?
that's a. I have used both terms because even though I am unhoused, I have so much privilege to have roof. Many different people help. So I feel like unhoused comes from the need to not be offensive, and I don't really know where I stand. I think that the the standard homeless person doesn't care about the term; they care about the help.
Yes,
That being said, words do have power, and I am learning. I'm a work in progress myself, so I try to move towards unhoused just in case while I keep on learning. Um, it's maybe we will have centers called home more soon, and home
yes.
more will be for those people that can be there 24/7 to heal for 3 years, not being asked a thing in return, but to eat healthy food, breathe, love, chant, dance together, and meditate their way back to health.
I'm pleased to hear you answer it that way, Josette, because I hear it and I get skeptical that, okay, why are we changing terminology and are we pulling the focus away from the real issue, which is the help that they need, and trying to come up with some term that perhaps makes people feel better by thinking that they're more passionate because they used a different term for it.
Yes, yes, and again, like I'm just a learning in progress. I don't know much. So
And I
I'm,
could be totally wrong, so
yes, we don't know.
we don't know.
We do
Okay.
our best and we are willing to learn.
Yes. All right. What's your most effective mindfulness routine?
Breath work.
Breath work.
Breath work. Yes, breath work rewires the brain if you're very intentional with it and constant and dedicated. I've seen incredible improvements in doing it. So if I were to create a home more center in the future because I've made the money, which will come soon, I would have people not work, but have those routines that they have to do every day together, such as breath work, meditation, listening to affirmation, happy dances, everything that
Yeah.
raises the spirit and nurtures it with one another.
What specific breathing routines do you do?
I do mostly two different ones, though I like to explore different kinds. The box breathing has been very
Yes.
helpful. And then I do the 3-7-8. So, I'm sorry, it's 4-7-8. So I breathe in 4 times. I hold it for 7, and then I let it out for 8. And I do that as long as I can until I feel the numbing of my front lobe, and then I go into meditative state. And it seems to be the most effective method for me to connect with my discernment when I have questions.
Interesting. I had not heard of the second one. I've heard of box breathing through a podcast, and it was actually this ex SWAT guy. And apparently
Mm,
in the military, they're learned box breathing because they're under super stressful conditions, and they use that to calm themselves down.
mm-hmm.
What
Interesting. Yes.
what other things do you do? Because it sounds like when you had this switch of thinking, and you
Mm.
got you on such a better path, you started taking better care of yourself. What other things have you done that are part of your routine that have really
Okay.
helped you?
When
And
when I wake up, the first thing I do when I'm still in the clouds is to be so thankful to be able to breathe, for my life, for my limbs, to feel good. And then I switch slightly towards visualizing how I would like my day to go. Um, with those feelings of, oh my goodness, this went better than I thought. And to see myself at the end of the day, just, oh, I did amazing. Then I usually do some breath work outside in the sunshine. I try to ground myself directly with the earth, do that deep breathing, meditation, and then I listen to my affirmation that I record for myself very intentionally. So my voice, my desired intentions and affirmation. Um, and then I do a little manifestation practice. So I have against my wall things I want to achieve and accomplish. And it's written in the present tense, like, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful. And it's incredibly amazing that that I made this movie happen.
right.
And so I go into my little, woo! Nutrition, watching my nutrition is very important and a little of a challenge because I'm on food stamps, but just products from the earth, no conservative, no added sugar, no colorant, no salt, a lot of vitamin D because I'm vitamin D deficient. So sardines, even though I know sardines are struggling right now, but oh well. Every day I go to the park with my dog, and so
Hmm.
that's I see the birds and I appreciate the fact that I can see the birds. And oh, I
Yeah.
love the bees and the trees. So I can go on and on. I do puzzles with happy music to pump me up and
Yeah.
breath work also with that.
Yeah.
The list is long, Rob. Are you sure you want me to do a podcast on that? Because that alone
Were
is a
you,
podcast.
were you, it would be, it absolutely could be. Were you on, and are you still on medication for anxiety and depression?
I'm prescribed and I have to comply by picking it up. And that's a tough one because I'm being recorded.
Okay. Okay. But you're finding your mindfulness, these mental and physical things that you're doing to improve yourself are much more effective for you.
Billion times because I have been medicated for many, 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 many years, many, many, many drugs. And then I was labeled treatment resistant. All these meds have side effects. They affect the liver. What people need is deep rest, safety, love, and a bunch of coping skills.
Yes.
So, and of course, it's hard to have coping skills and to get motivated to do them. That's why, as part of my production, I do have a mental health section that's developing where we can all do that together for free. Because there's a lot of people who know what they need to do, but they don't have the willpower. But if you do it as a support group type of way, then people show up, it's free, and then they do it every day and they get better. We get better because we're all interconnected.
Have you written the scripts for these two movies?
I have. Every time I got a denial from a producer, I used it to intentionally, okay, this is because there's something bigger for me. I'd better get to it. And so I got denied a bunch of times, and other times they were producers with intention. So again, I'm not willing to go that route. And so as I kept advancing, I was like, wow, my product is so amazing. So I was told the next step is to get an agent, and I couldn't afford an agent. And I was like, okay, so let me discern, meditate. What is up? What is up? I know that I'm doing the right things. And so the answer that I get through feeling is, why can't you be the producer? And so I started learning the business. I'm like, why? I wasn't a script writer before. I wasn't an author before. I wasn't doing medical research before. And I've done all those stuff. So how amazing if I can make it happen while living with housing insecurity, on food stamp without a car. And people told me, well, you can't do it. You would need to have so much visibility. And so I was like, okay, visibility it will be. And I started building my crowd one person at a time, one podcast at a time, and I'm on my way, Rob.
All right, I just thought of a rapid fire question. Who would you like to play you? What actress would you like to play you?
That is a good question. So obviously for my youngest self, I'm gonna have to be casting people, but I am definitely going to be the actress for those later years in life. And when people tell me, well, what qualifies you to be an actress? I'm like, I've acted my whole life like I was okay when I was crumbling in depression, PTSD, shame, guilt. I'm qualified. I'm gonna
Yeah.
be my own actress. So you're seeing the scriptwriter, producer, actress, voiceover in her own true life story that's gonna happen while on food stamps, unhoused, and with no car. That's amazing. I'm excited. I'm
I
cheering
can't wait to
myself up.
I can't wait to see it, Josette.
Thank you, Rob.
You know, one thing we haven't explained for listeners, and I heard you talk about it yesterday, Josette, is you've made a decision to be homeless, if you want to call it that. You are finding ways to, you have a roof over your head right now, you're house sitting, you're doing different things to find a secure place to live. But why you're deciding to do that, as opposed to you have an education, a good education, you could potentially be out being a teacher, you could do other things. And I know
Oh,
it's
that's a
tied
deep.
to it's
Yes.
tied to this condition that you've been diagnosed with. Can you explain maybe for listeners a little bit
Yes.
about that? Because they might be wondering.
Absolutely. So, again, privilege beyond measure to have choices and plenty of them. I should have disability because of that condition. And even if I didn't, because of my lengthy history of mental health and being able to get great jobs, but not keeping any because I can't handle anything. I couldn't. I should be careful with my words because I believe words have power. That being said, I'm still waiting for my disability case and I've gotten denied countless times. And the reason is resilience. Unfortunately, if they see that you have a high level of education / a high level of debt that comes with it, and that you've gotten good jobs, they put you last of the line. So they make you wait a year, even though they know right away they're going to deny you. And then they deny you, hoping that eventually you're going to give up. You're going to give up and you are a weight that is freed from the system. Now, I still don't have access to treatment in the United States because they have me under demyelinating disease, but they don't know which of the three kinds. And again, that feels to me like a political excuse to not get me treatment because my treatment would cost the government $100,000 a year in treatment and care for life. I have access in Mexico, but it's a luxury still because the infusions revolve around $3,000 each. So even though I feel great and I truly believe that I would be able to handle working a couple of hours here and there and therefore not struggle as much financially because it is a stressor that I don't talk about. I have found my purpose and I am living my purpose, which is I know I'm going to make it and it's a matter of time, but it's has to be a full investment of one, maintaining my health, which it's a lot of work. Again, I could do a podcast on this alone. And so if I work 2 to 3 hours a day, because that's the time frame that I'm functional without interfering with my self-care, it has to be with connecting with people in podcasts, with publishing books, with writing that script, with learning the business. How am I going to crowdfund? What about, I don't have a background in business. All this is learning on my own. So intentionality, purpose, passion, and staying grounded in that faith that you talk about. And thankfulness, because I know a lot of people have to pay a mortgage to feed their child. They wouldn't have that option that I have.
Yeah. What the symptoms when they hit you sound quite severe, all the things that you described, including losing eyesight, which is pretty scary. Are those still happening to you? Are they occurring less frequently?
So I'm so thankful I haven't relapsed, and I have stopped treatment in Mexico because of lack of funds.
Yeah.
I get what we call flare-ups. So the fatigue can interfere with my day, but because of my lifestyle, I am able to listen to it and go into, okay, I'm going to nap, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to listen to my body and the message.
Yeah.
The second thing is my eyesight does this one particularly that you see not aligned well as part of my most severe episode, which was a a seizure in the United States, completely discarded. But yeah, the reminder for me to not prioritize working for a system that doesn't work for me is also very powerful. Like, oh my gosh, I'm stressed. I can't afford Q-tips this month. Maybe I should just get a job. And then I go into my calming meditation, and I remember where I've been in 2021 when I was in agonizing pain, suicidal, still undiagnosed. And no, it brings me back to what would I tell my daughter if I had one? Love, keep grounded in your faith. Listen to your body because it's telling you when to stop, when to write a book, slack it, and publish it. And just so I haven't relapsed, but I have flare-ups. Little flare-ups usually linked to stress, which that's why lots of meditation.
Yes. Yeah. A lot is linked to stress. Is there a cure? Is there a cure for this, or is it just something you get on treatments to make the symptoms go away?
The infusions don't stop the disease. They slow down the progression of the disease and the severity of episodes. There is a cure, even though some people are telling me that's not true. There is a cure. It's stem cell transplant. And stem cell transplant here would be available for billionaires. So I started trying to get stem cell transplant as a determined student in I think it was 2022. I have trouble remembering because of all the things that happened. But I got denied because I didn't pass my heart test. I had a coronary angiogram that didn't go through because I became cardiac on beta blocker, proving that I also have heart concerns. So anyways, I was trying to get it in Chihuahua or in Pueblas, which are two places in Mexico that would have done it if I had passed the test for $50,000. But I was so determined. I was like, I'm going to raise the money. I'm going to get it. I'm so glad I didn't, because I was able to graduate and learn about nutrition and more coping skills and self-healing stuff. So everything happens for a reason. It's important for me to believe that for myself. Now, I would never tell people to do that for themselves because I don't know their situation. Yeah, I feel great.
Yeah. And Josette, don't you find that we don't often know the reasons at the time, maybe years before, or many, many years before you finally see why things turned out the way they did. And at the time we're
Yes.
angry because why didn't I get this?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm blessed, thankful, happy. I'm the happiest person I know, Rob. And I truly am. And so I know it's meant to say, and I have to work on it. I'm not going to say that I don't have bad days. I do have days where intrusive thoughts creep in of my chances of making it without relapsing and making it in my circumstances. But I'm good now at redirecting them gently. I accept them. I understand they are justified fears. And then I love them back to life, into faith.
I would have to guess, Josette, that joy that you are describing has to come from A, your faith, and B, your gratitude of being thankful for what you do have.
Absolutely. I think it's a combination of many things, but yes,
Yeah.
definitely my faith and my gratitude and
Yeah.
knowing where I've been. I mean, how I felt about myself my whole life, the fears I carried along the way, the nightmares that I couldn't get over until 2023, 2022. It's incredible. And that's my hero. Like when people ask me, who's your hero? I don't want to say that because it sounds so stuck up. Uh, but truly, when I take a step back, looking at my life, that little girl, she would be proud of me.
I bet she would, Josette. I bet she would. Um, yeah, and I just think back to your poppy and, that little girl with the love that you had for your grandfather, I can just imagine. Who played a
Yes,
big role, right, in this story.
absolutely.
Yeah.
He would be very proud of me.
You must miss him.
Do I, and my attach, I don't, death is very interesting. I feel like I don't process it the same way than the norm, and maybe it's part of being my neurodivergence. But I feel like it's transition, and so I don't feel like I've lost him. I feel, in fact, my father passed away in 2023. So
Did he?
yeah, he passed away, but in a good way, I guess. I mean, if there is such thing, is heart given. He had a lot of heart problems,
Yeah.
but I didn't really feel so much grief like most people would expect from me being so close to him because he had become very close to him. It feels like he's there. So when I connect with the divine, with God, I also feel that ability to see my dog that passed and feel him next to me, speak to my father like if he was there, just in a different form.
Yeah.
And so whether it's imagination or something deeper doesn't truly matter because I feel good with it. So
There's so much mental illness in this country, and I know so many people that are suffering from it. What advice, if any, do you have? And it's hard to give advice, I think, for me myself too, because I'm fortunate that I get depressed occasionally, but nothing like what others are going through. Do you have words of
uh,
help?
yes, like you said, Rob, giving advice is coming from a place where we think we know. And so
Yeah.
what has helped me is not people trying to give me tools or helping me with ways. It's people loving me unconditionally. People listening non-judgmentally, and people that didn't have answers but made sure to let me know that they believed in me no matter what, that they loved me, that I was somebody that was capable. So I think because it has been the most efficient thing that has worked for me, I tend to want to extend the same gesture towards others. Not, A, you should eat this, you shouldn't eat that, you should do this, you shouldn't do that. But I see you. You are important and you are loved. And would you like to go for coffee? No, no problem. I understand. So, well, I understand is also even a little stretch, but the point is just unconditional, non-judgmental love is
What does
probably the most
unconditional
powerful.
love look like, Josette? Is it just listening?
Not necessarily. I think it's an energetic thing that, so coming back to the Bible, and again, I don't want to put off anybody else from any other faith. Keep in mind that I consider myself an Omnist, so you're not excluded from this. But Christ consciousness, what we call Christ consciousness of loving. Don't throw the rock because you are a sinner too, right? Don't throw the rock to the prostitute. You are a sinner as well. Look at the plank in your own eye. Realize that you have work to do within yourself. So help without wanting or expecting anything in return, right? Jesus Christ wasn't healing to get paid.
Right.
He wasn't feeding to get paid. He was interfering with systems and throwing tables where he realized that the law isn't always just. So move towards that I try to move towards that inner discernment of, okay, I have this feeling. Is it a positive one? Is it a negative one? If it's a positive one, how do I share it? And if it's a negative one, how can I work in myself? Because it means I have some work to do with myself. Lots of it's my work, me, myself, and I am not positioned to tell people what they should do.
No, but I think that's beautiful advice, Josette, and something that we often need to be reminded of. And it goes back to you know, when they asked Jesus to the two greatest commandments, right? Love God and love
Hmm.
others. And
Absolutely.
that's what we're
Yes.
talking
Yeah.
about here. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, how can people show love to you? How can people help you?
I get a lot of love. I'm so blessed. I will be hopefully getting a business account and starting to crowdfund, hopefully within 2 to 3 weeks. So it will be on LinkedIn, but I will also post it on other social media. You can share it. Visibility helps me a lot. So if you know magazines that are willing to interview me or podcasts that are willing to make me uncomfortable, let's do it. Talk shows. And if you don't have any of those options because you don't feel comfortable even sharing a link, you can schedule a Zoom meeting to get to know me, and I would love to hear your story.
Yes, and I think you mentioned this yesterday. You like doing virtual coffees.
Well, I prefer them in person, but distance.
I
Even
would
if you
love to
were
have coffee with you. I wish I could just blink over to El Paso and have a coffee with you.
soon, Rob,
Yes,
manifest it.
I'll manifest it. That's right. It can happen. And how can people best connect with you?
LinkedIn is my number one platform. And so right now I am focused on that because I can be controversial on other platforms. So if you don't think like me, you might not like my posts. I need to lay off a little bit the politics, I've been told, but I'm very passionate about social justice. It doesn't come from a bad place.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I have some people from also all faith and all political stands who somehow miraculously still grant me that kindness.
Yes. Yes. And I have to avoid politics, even in my own family, Josette. And
Yeah.
I want to stick to this conversation really that is for me Christ centered, the love,
Huh.
right?
Huh.
Regardless of how you and I might think politically. That
Hmm.
to me, that's not important. That's something worldly that is not nearly as important as what we're discussing.
Yes, and it's not, I don't disagree with you, Rob. I think that everybody is so different and God gives us a different journey. And so I feel that mine is intentionally very multi-layered. I've always been passionate about social justice and fighting for others. So of course that comes with many layers of controversies. But that's why we have the luxury of having different platforms and we learn. I might change along the way, hopefully, because that's growth, right?
Yes. And having these conversations, right, to really
Mm-hmm.
understand where we're coming
Yeah.
from. So I've really enjoyed this conversation. You've had a fascinating story, and your story's not over.
It's in the making.
There's so much yet to come, Josette, and I can't wait to see where it takes you.
Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate your time and patience for all the listeners. I know I can be a little much with my neurodivergence.
No, not at all. Not at all. My only last words are, and I get to use my French, bon chance.
Merci beaucoup, Rob.
De rien.